I am honored to meet you under the sponsorship of His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum. May Allah bless him. All thanks for the organizers, for the people in the MBRF in cooperation with the UNDP. I welcome our guests and speakers, His Excellency Karam Jabr and Ali Jabr and Ali Obaid Al-Hamli. Distinguished guests, as we know, the world has witnessed many crises, either pandemics, political, or health, over history and over many times. And in every time, there were different weapons to combat these crises. And one of these weapons, and the most important,
فهي تملك تأثير أكبر وأسرع. اليوم تلعب وسائل الإعلام دور أكبر وأصعب من
We work hand in hand in order to combat the pandemic and to combat COVID-19. This is about the social media and the fallacies that we have. We start with His Excellency Judah. The role of the media today, the challenges that we encounter, how to combat disease, and how to combat fallacies and wrong media news. Peace be upon you. Wish you success on the occasion of the good days and the approaching of the holy month of Ramadan. We hope that the corona is over now, and we have lived 2 years which are difficult due to the difficulty of the lockdown. And we missed the holy month of Ramadan last year and the year before during the pandemic. We hope that the end of the pandemic is this year during this Ramadan. The role of the media, I believe in a quotation, media is like fire. Either can make fire or warmth. Media, I'm talking about Egyptian media, which dealt with corona at levels. First, the panic phase, when the pandemic started or broke out. There was panic all the time, and many victims were also. And tragic situations as well. And people really were locked in their houses. The media started this war.
The first phase, which is the shock phase, because nobody understood what is going on and where did this pandemic came from, either from the USA or from other parts of the world, which was manufactured in laboratories or other places. So the humanity did not witness that over history. After this phase, they started to take care of the awareness of people and the internal affairs and raising people's awareness to balance between lockdown and working. And this was an unprecedented experiment. At the beginning, we connected other parts, and His Highness President Sisi said we should lock down to minimize the danger of the pandemic and the virus. Here, media with all its kinds was the media of the nation, which adopted the policy and the objectives to disseminate the objectives and the data, and over time the data proved that they are correct, and media's role was important, particularly social media, and the largest space of social media controlled initially for the fault direction of this pandemic. And it started to cooperate with specialized media tools and materials to interact quickly among the sites and the places, and more importantly, there was no credibility for the truth of the news before its dissemination and its publication. And in the Oriental videos, short videos, for example, maybe it had 45 million viewers and spread largely. And in the third phase, the Egyptian media adopted to secure the security policy for the people, to secure them against this pandemic. And Egypt did not stop for the development plan, which started at the beginning of the pandemic. And it is one of the least countries that have development rates. And the big officials from their sites and their works, they secured people. And thanks God, Egypt managed to overcome this pandemic. And during the next period, we can say that the pandemic has ended in Egypt with least dangers and least losses, and we hope that the Arab nation and the Islamic nation will recover from this pandemic. And Ukraine and Corona have close names. We hope that these will end soon. Thank you, Your Excellency, Mr. Ali Jabr. Mr. Karam Jabr. Mr. Ali Jabr, the situation will be different from here and from Egypt. How did it start? Whether the Arab world or the Gulf area, they combated the false ideas, or the solution is the same. What I believe is that it is not the problem of the pandemic. I am as interpreter, I cannot hear the speaker, please, well. I cannot hear the speaker, please, well. If he can use the mic, please. With the increase of the people who use social media, why did it come with social media? Because social media is uncontrollable and unorganized, and everyone considers himself a master for publishing everything before making correct of it. The most important thing is publication before verification, which is the most important thing. I remember as a journalist, there are 20 phases for verification before publishing any piece of news in the newspaper or the TV. Now, anybody can publish anything before verifying it. This increases when the number of social media users increases, and there is differences in the Gulf area, and Levant is also a different way, and where countries have laws, strict laws, is different also. And some people use it and deal with them seriously when they enforce certain laws to look for the false and the fallacy news, which is the reckless regard. This is punished by the law, by the way. If any false news is published, the countries that respect law and following the procedures can control these things. And the Twitters or people who use Instagram or other social media, they take this into consideration before publishing the false news. It is a matter of laws. Some countries lack these laws, but if they are existed, they are not controlled. So if they are found, they should punish the people who publish the false laws. I think this is a big challenge for the countries who respect laws, is how to legalize these things in a way that respects 2 points: the security of the society against the false and the expression of words. This is the thin line over the media historians, which we research and control. This is a thin thread that, in terms of the legalizer and the legislator, to look it at a strict eye and deep insight. We should respect and protect this light to protect the society and the freedom of expression during the over the pandemic in the Gulf area, and specifically in the UAE. There are strict laws against these things, and many procedures were taken against the vaccine. In USA, for example, social media gave votes and raised votes for people who are not scientific and who called for taking the vaccine in a false way. And this is contributed to disseminate worry. When you, this is resembled to teaching the student when the red light is, when the light is red, you should stop. And when the green light is on, you should walk. So this is a resemblance between taking the vaccine and teaching the student, the boy, how to cross the road. So if anyone, many followers of social media, he should have a responsibility to protect them and respect their opinion and respect their mindsets and health and everything, by the way. Thank you, Mr. Ali. Mr. Al-Hamli, as Mr. Ali Jabr said, the laws can be the main thing that should be existed in all countries. Under the social media, the world has been small. We have received much information from foreign or Arab countries with different levels. So in these critical situations, we need trusty situations. How the receiver can protect himself. As we said, some countries put laws and some lack the laws, and the space is open for everybody. So there are many different platforms, trusty or untrusty. The documented ones, sometimes these platforms disseminate false information. In the name of Allah, the most beneficent, the most merciful. Actually, the experience of Corona, the world witnessed difficult conditions. We talk about, we experienced a difficult period during the past 2 years. I am, as interpreter, cannot hear the speaker well, please. I cannot hear the speaker well as interpreter. I am, as interpreter, cannot hear the speaker, please, as interpreter. If he can use the mic, please. When this situation has went up beyond Lojain and reached the Europe and the Arab world, the policies have changed completely. Nearly since the mid of March, the mass media started to change how to deal with this situation. Perhaps, maybe this is a beneficial harm what we call the conventional mass media, like TV channels and newspapers, have encountered a battle or an attack from social media. As we said, it is at the phase of clinical death because people went away from mass media and from channels and newspapers. But the amount of false information and news that established on social media may regain these channels their consideration and importance and give it and revive these channels and these social medias under this pandemic. This is what has happened, really. I personally believe that since the beginning of March, as I'm talking about the personal experience as social media in Dubai, the situation has turned up completely, and the pandemic started the first and the last news. And the focus is on how to deal with this pandemic, particularly when the committees started and commissions started to deal with the crisis and contingencies and emergencies and make conferences in this regard. The mass media, we talk about Dubai social media, during March until the end of April or May, I believe that Dubai social media doubled 10 times than before. We dealt with wars and covering summit conferences and important events and occasions, but this experiment is completely different. We hear that crises and pandemics like flu, Spanish flu, and plague and many diseases have disseminated and spread, but we did not expect what the effect of corona has affected psychologically and economically on the world. All the airports around the world locked down. We became to treat with something new with us, and the battle started. To rectify the mass media, which are conventional and should not disseminate the false things. I have actually presentation for a few minutes to clarify during 2 or 3 months in Dubai Media Foundation and in Dubai channels how much we produced during this period. And to show the interaction of social media with this production. This is only the production of in 2020. We produced 141 like Your Health is a Trust for 25 minutes program. It is not found on the screen, I'm sorry. The same screen. It is found on the same screen. In less than 3 months, we produced more than 141 about Your Health is Integrity to raise awareness for people. For every episode, for 25 minutes, we produced 25 minutes to stay at home. The period is 180 minutes for each episode. We covered and participated in preparing and covering press media pertinent to Dubai government. Like, for example, the Committee of Crisis. We covered 7 conferences for 40 minutes each, and we presented 39 episodes for discussion pertaining to Corona for 40 minutes each, and we presented 36 of a financial plan. This is, for example, political, but pandemic affected also political side, and Corona also affected the economy. Every episode is 35 minutes long. We also presented briefings, 459 briefings for 5 minutes each. We presented in English also 181 news briefing in Arabic language for 5 minutes each. and press media for 66 for the UAE, for 20 minutes each for the UAE. In 2021, we presented 11 episodes on how to deal for 50 minutes each episode. We covered 53 media coverage for the UAE. We presented 163 briefing. We presented 984 news in Arabic. On the accounts of Dubai media and social media, we will see how the interaction was. The program of Stay at Home, we published 4,900 publications about the program. Resulted on this contribution the interaction of 342,630 interaction, and 1,700,000,000 viewers in less than 3 months. The program of Your Health is Amana. On the social media, they presented 582 Twitters and publications, resulted in 2,075 with 56 million or 850 viewers. We presented also 233 Twitters, resulted on 21 and 800 with 809 million viewers. We cannot verify the number of these viewers. For everyone, we have 911 Twitters with 74,750 viewers. And UAE News, we presented 1,620 Twitters with 85,440 contributors, and thanks Ya Watan, we have 215 Twitters with 62,880,000 viewers. These are Stay at Home was 25 episodes with 3 hours each, and the graph rose up during the social media during this pandemic. This confirms that mass media, which are described as conventional, are not less important than social media, which have started to depend on the social media and have credibility of what has been published on conventional social media. These are the hashtags about the corona and stay at home and the programs, which these are the most deliberated hashtags, which gives an idea about mass media, which we call them conventional, have become the source, the first and the basic source for information and for receiving information, trust information. The social media channels, most of them have played a big role in disrupting and giving false information and panic. This also, there is another part. The people who work in social media, from TV and media, have faced dangers during this pandemic. The rate of infection in these social media among the workers was very high. During 1 month, for example, I have 28 to 30 cases every month. All government bodies have changed to work remotely, and they entered into hospitals and they went to airports and centers, different centers. This was due to what they have faced from cases. So they were described as the soldiers of the first line, with the police and doctors, with all people to combat the pandemic. Thank you, Mr. Ali. Sayyid Michael Peter. The shock started with understanding. Mr. Ali Jabr mentioned the awareness danger is not less than the danger of the disease. You as a mass media, international mass media, how did you face this pandemic under the lockdown of information? How did you face this pandemic under the lockdown of information?
The last, because many important things and true things have been already mentioned. I think that I would say there were a bit of kind of two dimensions for us with this COVID crisis. The first one that just has been mentioned by my colleague is that as an organization ourselves, we have been hit by this crisis. And as an organization ourselves, we had to completely rethink the way how we are working. We are a live 24/7 news worldwide media in the world, and you can imagine, you have all experienced this crisis, you can imagine that at one point of the time, we had 20, 30, 40, 50, 60% of COVID cases in a newsroom that had to produce 24/7 days, nights, while in the same time, all our advertisers stopped their advertising campaign. Of course, they didn't want to advertise anymore. So there were no more revenue coming in the company. I'm speaking for us, but of course for all our peers in the media industry. So we had to put in place ourselves a lot of different process, a new way of working with the remote, etc. That was a trauma at the time being, and to understand how to work. I think that this is not the question, and I will not go through it, but I think that's the main aspect of this crisis. It has learned all the organizations. I'm sure that it's exactly the same for you to rethink the way how to work in a global way. Now about the impact that a media like us can have on such a crisis. I think that the summarize of everything is the title of this summit. I think that this unprecedented crisis learned all of us what is knowledge. I think that as it has been said here, I would resume knowledge in this case in three main points. Knowledge is about facts. Knowledge, at the end of the day, whatever we can say, think, develop, knowledge, it's first facts. And I think that indeed, in this crisis, as it has been rightly said, the traditional, the historical media who are trying to spend so much attention, time, and money into trustworthiness became, let's say, the reference. I think that we speak a lot about social media. Social media are spreading fake information. Okay, great, we know it, misleading information. But I think that this part is the smallest part of what social medias are about. Social medias are about bubbles of opinion. They are here to confront your opinion with people who think the same. They are building algorithm in their. It's all about this, to be sure that you will be able to share what your opinion is on a matter with people who think the same than you. The only problem in this algorithm is that it will be very hard to confront your opinion with people who don't have the same, because they will not enter into your bubble. And opinion is one thing, but of course, facts are the basis of everything in this kind of crisis. So I think that what we have all done at this time was to deliver facts as they are. I think that the second important point is confrontations of perspectives, multiple perspectives, and not only national perspectives. At the beginning, a lot of wrong opinions came from the fact that people were only looking at what were happening in their own country, in their own town, in their own environments. And in Euronews, as we are a very international and multi-cultural media, we tried right from the beginning to give as a knowledge to the people what was happening elsewhere, to show that it was not only something which was the fault of the government. One of the first reactions was indeed of the people, the citizens in many countries, I'm speaking about Europe, my region, that were saying, okay, the government is taking decisions, and some say they were bad, they were good, but they were just judging them as decisions by themselves. But when these decisions were confronted to all the other decisions which were taken by all the other governments everywhere else in the world, of course, the perspective was enlarged and not exactly the same. And I would say the third main point, it's about being open-minded. Knowledge is about being open-minded. I think that a lot of us, by human nature, again, as I said before, like to be confronted with what we think. And most of the time, it's a quite easy intellectual process to, when we speak about media, to consume media that confront us with our own thoughts. It's a bit more difficult, it's a bit more intellectual exercise to try to open our minds and to see and to hear other perspectives from other people. And this is what we, I think, learned too in this crisis, is that confronting different perspectives of what happens everywhere else to a bit educate ourselves much better is something that works. And all of us, I mean, all the media in this planet, I think the traditional, respectful, trustworthy media, in my opinion, have tried to go in that sense, and it was a big lesson. I think that the world of media will not think the same now with what happens. And we see it, just to finish, and I don't want to mention it, but after the COVID crisis came another crisis. We won't speak about this, but I think my gut feeling, and I don't know if my colleagues are trusting this, sharing this with me, that the way how this huge phenomenon, unprecedented, came to all of us, made us learn how to work differently.
Thank you.
يتم التعامل بطريقة مختلفة.
I think you have a comment. I would like to make it clear that media does not make a fact, but base great efforts to reach it. And if it reaches it, he should, or it should reveal it as it is and not falsify it. My question is, did the facts, or were the facts falsified during the pandemic? Yes, of course, they are politicized during the pandemic for you and used for the interest of people to enter certain places based on the unstrict studies. And there are rumors also that these vaccines are killing, and people were warned for political reasons. The fact was falsified internationally on WHO, and a lot of information and data and the distribution of vaccines was different from north to south. So these vaccines were made for the rich people. This is a falsification for the fact. The first thing is how to combat the rumors and not to respond to the rumors. The response of the rumors helps to disseminate and spread the rumors, but combating rumors is a start to predict the next rumor and the amount of information and data which lead at the end of combating the rumor before starting it. This is important. The other thing is that the official declaration should combat and race with the social media, because there are different speeds for the social media, it has a high and wide space, and everyone can comment, as we call, if it is correct, the difference between the theater and the cinema audience, who interact differently with the scenes and the actors. So the social media has created this big interaction, and millions of media representatives, regardless of getting a certificate or working in an international organization or newspaper, you can become a big journalist by social media. And a lot of people have social media with millions of views, which affect the international and the public law. The law is very important, and which is important than the law is the awareness, of course. We should create awareness among people so that it helps them see the facts. We should not conceal anything, because the facts can spread all over the world with different directions among people who are rich and poor. So reaching the facts is very important. What I mean is, at a point of time, we started with the Corona in the second year, the regain of awareness, and the mass media create friendship with other channels. So there is exchange between them. In the second phase, to be ready for Corona, it has not finished, but it has become weak, and we do not know what the future conceals for us if there are changes. So the lessons we learned from Corona is increasing the awareness and combating rumors and official cooperation. All the Arab worlds contributed and cooperated against this pandemic with credibility, fast, and interaction among many sectors of people. Thank you, Your Excellency Al-Jabr. We have 14 minutes left. My last question to Mr. Ali Jabr, following to what Karam Jabr has said, a lot of suspicion has leaked in the pandemic, according to WHO or drug companies, or towards some countries who could try to invest this situation and this pandemic. They invested this pandemic for their interest. We know that in every conference there are recommendations. I think Mr. Karam Jabr had given his recommendations. What about you? What recommendations you give, Mr. Ali? I lived in a period and in a pandemic. If you think there is conspiracy, there is a theory of conspiracy, and His Excellency said a disease was used and a pandemic was used and affected all people for political purposes in different areas, from immigration and distributing the vaccine. And there is an evil mindset working, and it is existed, and we coexist with it, using mass media to transmit his policy for its political agenda, for a political purpose. All this is a phenomenon of electronic worm and electronic mosquitoes and flies. These are methods used some bodies and some countries and regimes. They use social media to spread rumors and evil ideas and information that harm people for political purposes, irrelevant to what is going on. I think the main recommendation that I should give and call for is that we have transformed from media to another phase of media. I would like to talk about the conventional media. There is nothing called conventional or non-conventional. Any mass media depends basically on verification before publication. This is the most important thing. If you would like to know the purposes, is verification before publication. As conventional media, the old one is legalizing the regulation, its regulation. There should be a workshop to legalize laws to regulate media over or on social media. Social media is a platform for dissemination. Social media is not mass media. They are technological means. They are technological companies that publish everything. I think that who uses social media for media work should be legalized and should have workshops to discuss these laws, taking into consideration the expression of them and the safety of the community. I think if there were laws for social media, this account can be locked and this account can enforce and enhance. I think our situation can be better. Mr. Saeed Hamli, Mr. Obaid Hamli, please. I would like to continue to what Mr. Ali said. As Mr. Ali said, there is no partition between conventional media and social media, which is called modern media. Media, I think, is a receiver and a message and a receptor, or receiver, sorry. So sender, message, receiver. The sender sends the message and the receiver receives the message. This is the media. The problem is that some people have looked at easy way and simple way. The problem is looking at this in a simple way and spreading the information in a false way. I think we are lucky in the UAE. We have two things. We have law for the social media that criminalize everyone who spreads false information. So when this law was issued and there is a follow-up by the prosecution, we have noticed that the number of rumors and using this kind of social media for spreading the rumors have reduced a lot. This is one point. On the other hand, any media representative or mass media needs a resource and a trust resource to give this information. Based on our dealing with this pandemic, we have more than one resource. We have the Commission of Emergencies and Crises, which held conferences and media coverage, daily media coverage, sometimes recurred more than once a day. And also there are medical resources, for example, the Ministry of Health and the local commissions. All these bodies helped us to afford information for the viewer. So when a rumor spreads on our social media, we hosted the one who has the true information and presented to the people. That people started not to trust any information spread even on social media, unless the source of this information is an official social media. All the influencers have used social media like TV, newspapers, and media to spread information. There is a kind of credibility and control of the information. So in the UAE, we were lucky, really, that a lot of rumors have no way to be spread. And the response to them was immediate and the correct information is revealed and conveyed to the people during the emergent and the health bodies in the UAE and during the social media that do not that receive their information from these sources. I think this information, including the social media and the conventional media, everything revealed should be subject to these rules, and correct information will be revealed to the audience and the people. There may be any mistake in the work or every work, maybe by the Twitter.
Yeah.
But the mistake margin will decline after the experience we have been through during the pandemic. Among the issues that we have faced is that we have seen some doctors or physicians on regional or international channels. They would give recommendations, and on the other hand, we have social media doctors who would warn people, and this has created this kind of concern. So people have been confronted with people who are talking unofficially with unofficial certificates. The most important thing that we have learned during this pandemic is that the biggest damage caused by the pandemic and misleading information, whether on social media or on other sources, you know that the most important, the most significant impact is the doubting science. Science is no. So science has become a viewpoint. This is one of the biggest phenomenon that are harming knowledge. So knowledge does not rely on media and this flora in the social media. Of course, there are reasons behind that. We have institutions that work on producing this content, like universities, research centers, labs. These institutions or organizations work on producing facts. So, as an example, we don't know if it is the good or bad cholesterol. So sometimes fruit is good, healthy. Sometimes they say it is harmful. Eggs, healthy, unhealthy. So there is a kind of corruption, and so as if it is an economic agenda to make use of this crisis. So those institutions or organizations that work on producing these facts, the UN, so there is a lot of bias. We have unfortunately come to a stage where we doubt science. Science and knowledge is no longer pure knowledge. It is more of a viewpoint and an opinion. So this is the biggest harm we have experienced. One of the biggest organizations or institutions whose credibility has been questioned is the World Health Organization. Imagine, whenever we have the chief of the WHO, we would expect a catastrophe to happen. This is a tragedy, but we don't trust the top organization in the world that is supposed to be in charge of protecting our health. When there are approved official agencies, and in the past we didn't have social media, so nobody would refute these facts. So even if there is a person, you would find that they have some political background. I don't know, there are some different agendas. So we have only 2 minutes and a half. Mr. Michael, are there any recommendations from your side as an international platform or podium?
equally confronted with another thing corresponding to your question, which is the user-generated content. So this confrontation, we speak a lot about fake news, wrong news, or whatever, but we learned equally that, well, in the COVID crisis, it was not so at the heart of everything, but that there are some information who come from the consumers themselves, and I think there is in this crisis, like in many other crises, a learning curve, excuse me, to be taught by us to how to treat these what we call user-generated content. So how to collaborate, indeed, how to use, how to give value to some contents that can come from some consumers themselves, from the citizens themselves. Whether they are experiencing a drama, whether they are experiencing, because you know this is always the problem. There were a country like at the beginning of the crisis, Georgia, which started the vaccination campaign, and the first or second day of the campaign, there have been a content that arrived that one of the person, a woman, died, you know. And of course, we understood after that she died not because of the vaccination, but as you can imagine, this content has spread over the country and has brought a big defiance toward this. So I think one of the question, to answer to your question about collaboration between media and consumers, is how to treat this information that comes from the consumer that sometimes makes sense, sometimes doesn't at all. And there is a lot of things to say, but I think that the time is running. I could speak 2 hours about this. I think that at the end of the day, it's all about the same. It's about fact-checking, and it's about, as all my colleagues said, trying to spread what we estimate as a credible media, what has to be spread as an information that makes sense and that will bring facts beyond all different opinions.
Thank you. إذا المنطق والعقل والوعي أعتقد كلهن.
I think that we all need logic, knowledge. So we come to the conclusion of this session. We thank the speakers, His Excellency Karam Jabr from Egypt, Mr. Ali Jabr, Group TV Director, MBC, Ali Obaid Al-Hamli, News Center Department Director, Dubai Media, and Michael Peters, Chairman of the Board of Directors, Euronews SA. Thank you so much for your attendance and listening.